Hey, good morning. We're talking about mentoring and the support you get from a mentor. And today we're going to talk about the challenges. Now, you may be like me and say, I can't really think of any challenges of a mentor and the support they provide. Well, we're going to dig into that and more on today's episode 797 of today's Antidote.
Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Hey, Tom.
Good morning. How are you, Bob, today?
I am okay, except I kind of butchered the opening, which always frustrates me.
Why do you believe you butchered the
opening?
opening?
And I got some feedback. Sorry.
That's okay. It's just all part of what happens.
That's it. It's a show.
At some point we'll get producers in a studio and all that stuff.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
Nah, I'm not sure. Wouldn't have the same feel, I don't think.
No?
It might go to your head.
It could. You're right. Yeah. We don't want anything going to my head. That's a precious space.
It's true. It is.
So.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Antidote, our daily broadcast and podcast, where each week Bob and I have a conversation around a topic. This week's topic, as Bob mentioned, is mentor support. And today we're going to discuss and dive into the challenges around that. Now, I know Bob said he didn't have any, although I would imagine we'll discover some as we go through the conversation. So what I say, and maybe your comments, might have an impact on how Bob feels about if there are challenges around mentor support. And of course, as we're having that discussion, we welcome your thoughts and ideas because we know that it'll add value to the show. So please feel free to share them in the comments, whatever social media you happen to be following us on, because we know that it'll have an impact. And at the conclusion of that conversation, Bob and I will each offer our one thing, our today's antidote, that thing that we hope will help you figure out if you're struggling, maybe with mentor support or something else, that it will help you find your next step along your own unique pathway to success. And of course, if you have a one thing you'd like to share, even though you may think, well, everyone knows this, why would I share this? Likely they've never heard it as it is real to you or the way that you may say it. And it just might strike a chord with them that will help them unlock something that they hadn't been able to unlock before. So we more than welcome your thoughts, ideas, and your one antidote as we go through the show. Before we dive into the topic, though, each morning, Bob and I do our celebrations. Bob, what are you celebrating today?
I am celebrating the fact that my cat let me sleep all night last night.
Nice.
That's a rarity. He's almost 9 months old, and he likes to wake me up at least once in the middle of the night. I think it's a check to see if I'm still alive. Unfortunately for me, once he wakes me, I'm usually awake for a while. So for whatever reason, last night he slept all night. I think it might be because the birds are outside at the bird feeder I got, and they are driving him crazy. So by nighttime, he sleeps.
Maybe it was that yesterday was the first day of spring.
No, could be.
Felt like it was, a chance to let you sleep in.
There you go. I don't know that I slept in. I think I was sleeping long enough. Bless you, by the way. Long enough to be on our program.
There you go.
So how about
Good
you? What celebrate you today?
What celebrate me today? Is that what you said? I am celebrating that, as I mentioned on yesterday's show, I think I mentioned it on the show, that I was taking part in jury selection, actually, yesterday. And while I was fascinated by the process, and a part of me was sort of looking to be seated in the jury, today I'm celebrating that I'm not. I have plenty to do this week, and that would have thrown a little bit of a wrench into a bunch of things. And so I was very happy that my number was 338, and I'm not sure they got past 150
Okay.
after exclusions and all those other things that make the process fascinating.
Right.
It was very different than the last time I remember going. The last time I just went into a room, I sat around and never did anything or really heard from anyone except you're free to go. Thank you for coming, and you're free to go. Whereas yesterday it was a little bit more of the process. I think it's called voir dire.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it was fascinating to watch. And I started getting to the point of, because you're in this big room, it's like a hall, a Legion hall, and the prosecuting attorney and the defending attorney were there. The judge was there. We had to answer as a group questions. Then you went back in the back to share your details about those questions, and then you came back out. They excused some based on, I think, some of the answers to the questions. And then they went number by number. The person walked up in front of the judge and the lawyers, and the judge would be like, is this potential juror acceptable? And you watch them go back and forth. And then they seated 12, and then they asked the state if the state was comfortable with it. And the state said no. And so then they had to go back to the next number. And it was fascinating to watch. And I was, as the process was going along, pretty sure they weren't going to get to 338 before they found 12 jurors and 3 alternates. So that's
the process was trying to find an impartial jury. All that
correct.
Really comes down to. I've never I've never been on a jury, but one time I was seated, I was like juror number 11. And they're like, I know, because I've watched a million court cases when I was a newspaper reporter, I know we're at the end and I'm finally going to be on the jury. And lo and behold, they're like, we have one more strike, Your Honor.
Mr. Graham, you're free to go. He didn't say that.
They don't like guys who used to be journalists. That doesn't go over real well.
Does anybody really like people who
Well, I'm going to change the mood. I'm going to move things more upbeat. Ed says, happy Equinox Day. That's right. It's which equinox is it? So spring started at 5 something yesterday afternoon, East Coast time. The equinox is today. I couldn't even begin to explain to you what all that means. I just know that it should get warmer sometime.
Sometime. It was a little warmer yesterday. The sun was out. It was nice.
Yeah, it was windy though.
It was warmer last week. Not sure why.
Yeah. Because it's Baltimore and the weather's. Oh, that's right. You were in Florida.
Yes.
Touche.
Yes.
So we should talk about the topic, Tom, because I'm fascinated by this. We're talking about mentoring. All week we've been talking about mentoring and the role of a mentor. And I went back and I listened to yesterday's episode. I don't think we really defined it in crystal clear terms. So can you real quickly describe what you see as a mentor?
Sure. I'm not sure I can real quickly do it. I will try. I think a mentor is a person who has had experiences, knowledge, experience, perspective that you believe would help you along the pathway that you've chosen. And they are willingly doing this for usually no payment. So they're able to share their knowledge, experience, and perspective with you. And they do it because they trust you and you believe that you trusted them.
Okay. I like that. That's a great definition. So with this, it sounds like a really positive relationship. And I've had mentors, and I know you have, and they've been very positive relationships. So how can there possibly be challenges to this?
Well, as I've said many other times on this show, yes, having a mentor support, there is an opportunity. There are always obstacles that come with every opportunity. And thus, with having a mentor support, I think there are obstacles as well. And I think one of the challenges is that what happens when they provide information or thoughts or ideas that you're different and you don't believe fits with who you are. So now if I don't do it, does the mentor think that I'm not listening to them, and then what's the value of them? I think that's one challenge. I think the other challenge is sometimes they get to a point where their experience isn't enough. And then how do you decide, well, maybe I need to get another mentor or switch mentors? I also think that another challenge is that sometimes you believe you've found the person that could be beneficial because of the track that you believe they've taken. And turns out it's not necessarily the case. Or things that you didn't expect to hear from them, see from them, that they do. And now you're trying to figure out what to do next. So I think that there's, again, every opportunity provides other challenges. And so I think even with a mentor, which, as you said, seems to be an only positive, beneficial experience, may have some other challenges around it.
Can I offer a couple that came up in my head as you were talking?
Of course. No, you can't speak today. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
There's the possibility that you exceed the expectations of the mentor and they become jealous, or they can stand in your way. I had a case where I had a really good mentor and that person ended up being a stumbling block to me in the end because our roles switched and it just didn't work the way it was, and we never really had the discussion. I think another thing is sometimes the people that we place in the role of mentors aren't the best communicators. They are talking in their language and we're talking in our language, and there can be friction from that. I know as someone who's taught thousands of college students, you don't talk to everyone the same way. Yes, in the classroom you do, but when you have a one-on-one with a student, with one student, you might be very direct. With another student, you might be very, asking questions. A third student, you might just wait them out and say nothing. And I think that's a role that some people who are in the role of mentoring, if we place them in that role, they may not be familiar or versed in those nuances. I also think another possibility is the person we place in the role of mentor doesn't understand that role and doesn't understand what we're looking for. We're not looking for them to tell us what to do. We're not looking for them to tell us when we mess things up. We're looking for them to have a dialogue with us so that we can better understand what we're doing.
In some cases, right? Because
in some cases, right.
Depends on how you've set up the arrangement. I think that's part of it.
And I can also say one of the challenges for a mentor relationship is sometimes the mentor gets as much, if not more, out of it than the mentee. And because those relationships tend to be finite, it can be difficult for the mentor to let go of that at some point. So it's like any human relationship, right? There's always the potential that it gets convoluted a little bit just because the other thing I know, the people that I've chosen to be mentors and have been mentors to me are very busy people. So one of the real challenges at times is to get on their clock.
Sure.
Hey, I need a half hour of your time. I'm really sorry, Bob, I'm busy. And it's like the same busy that makes them really good mentors is the same busy that makes them really hard to have time to talk to. And I think that can be a challenge. And also, it can be difficult as the person being mentored to accept what that person's saying, because they're not always going to give us "you're amazing." And I think I had one relationship with someone who I took a real, they're really good and I saw real potential. But when I started to talk to them about some of the things that they could explore to change themselves a bit, they wanted no part of that. That was like, yep, done. Your job is to tell me how great I am. I don't need anyone to tell me that maybe if I shifted how I looked at this one thing. So that can be difficult. I see Edwards joining with the comment. A 40-year friend that I've mentored and he was mentoring me has passed at 57 from cancer. I'm sorry to hear that. Many years of experience in both of us being entrepreneurs in different trades, bouncing off ideas with each other, has left a hollow spot in my heart. Point at hand is mentoring is a lifetime relationship. It can be. Sure. I think good mentoring relationships can be a lifelong relationship, but I also think they can be very brief. They can be weeks, days, months, depending on the situation. But sorry for your loss, Edward. That's got to be difficult. And I don't like when people die at 57 because, well, that's not good. That's not good to hear any day.
Correct. Well, and I think that's, it's interesting. I think those mentoring relationships can change, at one point, because each of us is unique. And if we believe that, we know that everyone can mentor us on something, some more than others. And at the same time, I think sort of as you said, Bob, is that sometimes the mentor becomes the mentee because even with all of their knowledge, experience, and perspective, they don't have your knowledge, experience, and perspective. So when you share something that happened, it could also add value to them and impact what's real for them. And so I think that, those relationships change. You mentioned that earlier. And I think there's challenges anytime there's change and trying to figure out, like, what does the relationship look like now? And, I think one of the interesting things is sometimes you think someone is your mentor, and in reality, they are feeling like you're mentoring them in some ways. And you might be in terms of how to be an effective mentor, right? Because you're giving, if you're being mentored by someone, then you're giving them feedback or thoughts and ideas or asking questions that, wow, they're like, I had never thought about that approach to this thing. That's something that has an impact for me. And I might look differently on how I might mentor someone else in the future, because now I have this new knowledge, experience, or perspective that can add value to someone else.
It's an important role. That I think so much of my success has been as the result of mentors. People that I want to understand how you do what you do. I want to be better at what I do. I want to learn what I can from you. And they've been kind enough and gracious enough to really let me behind the curtain. I remember with one person, I was like, I just want to pick your brain after every staff meeting. And I would literally go into his office and be like, so you shut him down in the middle of what he was saying. Why'd you do that? How'd you do that so well? How'd you know when to do it? And he was like, I cannot believe you're asking me. I mean, I was very tactical about it because I was trying to figure out how to run a meeting more effectively. And he was fascinated by my ability to be so into it. Like it was like a football play to me. That whole meeting, like, okay, you ran third down, you went this way. Why'd you go this way, not that way? What were you seeing in the defense? That's how I was looking at the meetings. And he found it really helpful for him because he had never realized the things he did.
Or he just did them.
And in the process, we actually identified something that he was doing that he wanted to work on that he had never recognized because no one had ever really asked him the question. So it can work both ways. And I think that's part of the power. I like Edward's comment, Tom. Rules of mentoring. Number 1, honesty. Number 2, question mark. I like that.
Yes. Well, I also think that as a part of that, I think there's an honesty also in that sometimes as a mentor, you have to choose what information you're willing to share or you want to share. You can't always. And when. Correct. And that's a judgment that or a decision you're trying to make, not a judgment. It's a decision that you're trying to make on, where is this person at? And I don't want to share information that is
damaging.
Well, or just that they're not ready for.
Right.
Like there have been times when I was mentoring someone and they'd ask me a question and I could give them some feedback, some thoughts and ideas. And yet I had more and I wasn't sure they were at a place where they could handle, accept, understand. And I think especially if they ask a question. If they ask a question and I have to choose, like, how do I respond? Because I think in some regards, you don't want to appear to knock them down, and sort of maybe destroy some of their dreams or thoughts or ideas. And at the same time, you don't want them to get overly ahead of the curve. As I think about this, because one of the places I thought had some valuable mentorship was in lacrosse officiating.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, I could ask questions about what's it like when I'm first starting out, what's it like to be a Division I official? And while that has value, if all I'm thinking about that is that end goal and what they're doing at a Division I game, and I'm almost always doing youth or high school, I'm not, the mentor at some point has to say, wow, this is what happens. And here's how that gets played out at the level that you're currently at. And I think that's sometimes the challenge. And I think if you put up Edward's second comment is,
look at that. We timed this out. We finally got this thing working.
There's the discernment of how honest to be. And I think
when to share that.
Sure. Yeah. And, because again, you could be super honest and, they ask you a question and be like, yeah, that's incorrect. What you did was incorrect. And for some people, they could understand and appreciate that you're trying to help them learn. For others, they can be turned off that, wow, you just keep telling me all the things that I'm doing incorrect. And I think that is a balance.
Edward adds another one. Positive feedback.
Well, you know how I feel about adjectives. I think.
Come on, Edward, you're setting them up this morning. I think enough of that.
I think,
but I also think there's a need to be positive, especially when things don't look very good for that person. If you came to me and said, I really blew this presentation today, I would want to give you some positive feedback. Tom, the fact that you were in front of these people, I'm sure people took something away from it. You're looking at it pretty negatively. Give it a little time, and I bet you're going to see that there was value in what you did. I think that's probably what he means. There's a later date where you have the time where you talk through tactically, hey, Tom, where do you think it didn't work out the way you were expecting? What might you do differently next time? All those things. But there's in that, I think so much of a role of a mentor is ultimately to be a cheerleader for us.
I think there's a place for that.
Okay.
I also think that if we're just being a cheerleader,
no, not always.
Really helping?
Not always, but certainly at times.
Okay. I wonder if we're helping them learn. Like that's, if I was going to go back down and re-answer the question you asked me when we first started this.
Okay.
Is that I might say, as I think about it at the moment, that a mentor is someone who helps us learn differently.
Okay.
Who helps us try to differently understand what is happening based on their knowledge, experience, and perspective. So it's not better understand or worse understand or I think there where some of the challenges lie is as a mentor, you don't want to feel like you're beating someone up. And at the same time, you don't want to feel like all you're doing is just praising what they do.
Right.
Neither of those really provide what you're looking for in the mentor, which is a different way to understand and to learn. And you learn because they have already learned some of those things. So now they're trying to help you see where you can learn from every situation. And I think that's, again, if I go back to the lacrosse world of it is, yeah, there are times when I didn't do things that the rule book said was correct. And I could really let that beat me up. Or I could say, hey, you know what I'm starting to learn is, unfortunately, one of the ways to better understand or differently understand the rules is to do something incorrect. Now it's permanently placed in my head that that is not the correct application of the rules. It is. So now I'm likely not to do it again. I mean, the number of times that I have done that and now are like, yeah, that won't happen again. Because I learned from it rather than just beat myself up over it or just have somebody say, that's okay. It's just one game. It's just one rule. You'll figure it out next time. You're awesome. Don't worry about it. I'd be like, okay, well, maybe I don't need to go back to the rule book and actually understand what's the language of the rule book. I'll get it right the next time. So I think
Edwards has
part
some
of that.
feedback for you, Tom, this morning.
Uh-oh.
He says, actually,
What?
Tom's insightful answers created the rules that he posted. So
No, and I appreciate that.
thank you for those kind words, Edward. I know Tom's honored by that.
Well, I think it's helpful in some regards to have someone who's like listening to what we say and then trying to apply it to a method, a strategy, a system that others can then leverage to figure out how to, get unstuck when they're stuck. I think that the three things that he shared, that I guess he took from what I said, is a great starting point for mentors that might help overcome some of the challenges that we're going to face. And a lot of it, I think, is really about communication.
I think that's at the core of mentoring. That's what makes it beautiful, and that's what can make it fraught. Is there's so much interpersonal communication, and I think for so many of us, it's communication that we don't do very often.
Sure.
So, Tom, are you ready with your one thing?
Yeah, I think I am.
When we talk about the challenges of getting support from a mentor?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest challenges is that we don't establish boundaries with a mentor, so that both sides have an understanding sort of where the situation, the relationship stands or is expected to be. And I think that's, if we look at all of the challenges that we brought up, you could go back and say, hey, if you had really set up, here are the boundaries of this relationship, could have really helped eliminate most of the challenges that we discussed. You talked about time being one of them. Okay, if we were clear around, hey, every time you have a situation that runs out, you reach out to me as your mentor. Well, that might be a little bit too much. And I also know that here are the times when I'm typically busy. Not that I couldn't make time for you and change the priorities that I have in my time, just as an awareness of what you're going through, and that you're not going to be necessarily available at every whim that I have of I need help. And it could be to what point, here's the information I really want to focus on. Here's the information I'm not as concerned about. So that, again, the mentor can maybe understand when their role, when they've sort of the mentee has outpaced or has moved beyond the experiences that the mentor has, and that it's a time to consider finding other mentors. I think that, as Edward sort of talked about, which I appreciate him sharing his example, I have a feeling that though they were friends together, they also were traveling this entrepreneurship path together. And so they each were gaining new knowledge and experience and were sharing it with one another. And at some point, the mentorship, it went from almost a mentorship to a mutually beneficial relationship that is more about us just sharing the differences that are going on so that we can expand, so that we're not just dealing with our own understanding of what's going on. We're also getting the benefit of somebody else sharing that with us. And I think that goes a little bit back to where it starts to become a little more like the community support that we gathered last year, is that
last week, you mean, not
sorry,
last year.
Yes, last week. That we are more and more on similar paths and able to just share all the value that we gained as a group, rather than just only as you alone trying to figure it all out. And I think that happens with a mentor as well. As you start out as somebody's mentoring one person, and again, you sometimes get to the point where they're at. And so now it's more of a mutually beneficial relationship and a mutual mentoring relationship, or knowledge sharing relationship. And it might be time then to start looking for who could then provide the next level of mentorship that you need.
Okay, Edward jumps in with boundaries, number 4 on the list. So, and I'm going to add, I think, a number 5 with my one thing. I think it's all about communication and the effective communication, both in terms of setting those boundaries and giving the feedback and discerning when and what to discuss at what times, and also how to be honest. So I think communication would go on that list if I were adding one to the list, but Edward only seems to like your list, so I'm out of luck, but I'll be okay.
Are you sure? I'm not sure you're really going to be okay with that. So please.
I'll struggle forth.
Add Bob's thing. He starts to get really concerned.
It's all good.
Sort of.
No, it is. It's all good.
You all would be fascinated of the things that we discuss or happen around us, and some of the things that challenge each of us. Let's put it that way.
You have
all
challenges? Right. I haven't heard one challenge you have. Ever.
I don't. Oh, I have lots of challenges. I just don't always share them. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for being a part of our show. Edward, thank you for your thoughts and ideas. And
yes, thank you.
And also for summarizing. Although now, when people don't need to listen to the episode, they can just go right there to the comments, and Edward's got it all summarized right there for them.
Perfect.
Which I appreciate. And for some, that's the
it might be our best episode.
What are those? What are those notes?
Show notes.
Cheat notes, or there's something else.
Show notes on the episodes of the podcast.
But what are they
really
called?
Good? You have all the details.
What are those things when somebody like summarizes a movie like that? There's
synopsis.
No, there's something else it's called. Cliff notes. That's what it is.
Cliff notes. Okay.
Yes. So anyhow, that's we appreciate all the thoughts and ideas, and thanks, Edward, for providing our cliff notes and summarization of the conversation. We
have one more. Community where quality time is available. There you go. I like it.
I like that.
Yes.
All right, everyone. If you have one thing that you would like to share, maybe it'll get added to Edward's list. Please feel free to share it in the comments because we know that it'll add value. Whether it makes the list or not, I don't know. That's up to Edward. He's creating the list. And so we appreciate the value that you are willing to share. If you're listening to the podcast and we know that there's no opportunity to share it there, please join us inside the Ring of Renegades Facebook group and share your thoughts and ideas there as well. Because we know that someone out there might just find that exactly the thing that they were looking for. And while you're sharing, you might find that within that community, there are others that maybe could serve as a mentor, or that maybe they would want to be mentored by you, and that you can find those things that you need to help you continue along your own unique pathway to success. So
I like this comment, Tom. Secretary Ed's footnotes. Yes. I love
Excellent.
it. I hope we get those more often. I like it.
Right. It definitely adds value to the show. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for being a part of our show today. We look forward to seeing you inside our Ring of Renegades Facebook group. If not, we'll see you tomorrow morning, 7 a.m.-ish Eastern time for our next episode of today's Antidote. Enjoy your day, everyone.
Hey, embrace the renegading you. It is so worth it today. Really is.
Today? Just today or every day?
Every day.
Okay. And especially today.
Especially today. All we have is today.
Isn't that a song?
All we have is, yeah, you're right. Yes.
I think maybe that's not exactly it, but maybe it's all we have is, or maybe it's all we need is love. That I know is a song.
How? Yes, they're kissing cousins.
Something like that. All right, everyone. We will see you soon. Thanks for listening to today's Antidote, powered by the Renegade Success Network. The Renegade Success Network helps you confidently create your own unique pathway to success. To learn more about the Renegade Success Network and how you can take your next step, follow us on Twitter, connect on LinkedIn, or join the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. For full details on how you can join our community, go to renegadesuccessnetwork.com. Embrace the renegade in you.